If you want, you can download it and include it in your project file structure. So jQuery uses a special syntax for selecting HTML elements and performing actions. jQuery is represented by a $sign, you can see here, and essentially every selector will look like this. Okay, you'll have the selector wrapped in parentheses with a $sign. Now, all of the same selectors we use for CSS can be used in jQuery. All right, we can stick the actual element in there, like you can see here. We have an H1, so this will take all H1s on the page and apply the hide action. All right, we can also use classes with a period and IDs with a number sign. All right, and then there's a lot of other selectors we can use as well. All right, so this is from the documentation. You can see this asterisk here. This is going to select all elements on the page. If we're in, let's say, a current function or a current element, we can use this to select it. Here you can see we're selecting all the paragraphs with the classes of intro. Here we're selecting the first paragraph element. Here we're selecting the first li inside of a UL. Here's the first child li. This is going to select all elements that have an href attribute, so we can actually select elements by their attributes. We can even go a step further and select all the elements that have an attribute equal to a certain value, or even attributes that are not equal to a certain value. This one here selects all button elements and input elements that have the type of button. Okay, so you can specify the input type. This here will select all of the even table row elements. This will select all the odd table row elements. Okay, so you have a wide range of selectors available. Now, document.ready in jQuery is used to make sure that everything is all set before you actually run your jQuery code, because you don't want to run it too early because it'll break, it won't run. All right, so you can see we're actually using the $sign here. We're using document as our selector, and we're calling .ready. Okay, that takes a callback function, and then all of our jQuery code would go in there. All right, if you want, you can use the shorthand syntax, which doesn't use the word document. It just cleans it up a little bit, but for the most part, we'll be using this. So just like with JavaScript, jQuery has its own events. Okay, so most DOM events have an equivalent in jQuery. So you can see we have click, we have mouse down, mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse up. So we have a bunch of different mouse events that we can use. Load, unload. We have a bunch of different keyboard events that we can use. Double click, die, bind, unbind. I'm not going to go through all of these and what they do. We will be touching on most of them throughout this section. All right. So the event syntax, basically we'll take some element, we'll use some kind of selector, and then dot, and then the name of the event, in this case is click, and then a callback function, and in that callback function is where we'll put our code. All right, now this here is actually a shorthand syntax for what it really is, which uses the .on action. So we can do this just as well, .on, and then the name of the event, and then the callback function. jQuery also has some really nice effects, so we can easily hide and show things using the hide and show action. We have toggle, which is basically going to switch back and forth. For instance, if we want to hide something, we'll click it, and then we'll click it again, and it'll show it. So it'll toggle those two states. All right, we also are able to fade in, fade out, fade toggle, and then fade to certain elements, and slide down, slide up, and slide toggle. Animate, which allows us to do basic animation, and then stop, which will stop any of these effects when run. All right, and we'll touch on these later on. So jQuery is very powerful when it comes to DOM manipulation. Okay, so we can actually edit the document object model using jQuery. So text will set or return text of a selected element. If we want the actual HTML and HTML tags, we can use that. Val is used for input form values. Adder will allow us to either get or set attributes. Append and prepend will allow us to insert content at the beginning and at the end of selected elements. All right, we also have before and after. This will allow us to insert content after and before elements. Remove, which will obviously remove selected elements and all of its child elements. And then we have empty, which is a little different. It doesn't remove the actual element, but it removes all the child elements from within. All right, and then we're also able to manipulate CSS using add class, remove class, toggle class, and then CSS, where we can actually add real CSS styles inside of that action. jQuery is also used to simplify Ajax. In the last part, when we went over JavaScript, we worked with Ajax a little bit, and this just makes it a lot easier than what we had to do there with creating the XHR object. Alright, so Ajax allows us to exchange data with a server and just upload parts of a web page without having to refresh the whole page. Alright, so jQuery gives us tools like load, which will load data from a server and put it into a selected element. You can see an example of the syntax right here. It takes a URL, data, and callback function. We also have get, which will request data from a server with an HTTP GET request, and also post, which will post data to a server using an HTTP post request. Alright, so that's just a very, very quick overview of jQuery and what we can do with it. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to set it up, show you how to use some of the selectors and some of the events.